A Dance Mom star is raising awareness about the risks of popping a pimple in a certain area of the face.
Yeah, so in a video seen by millions of TikTokers, Brooke Hyland says she was rushed to the hospital when she was warned by her followers that her pimple was located in the so-called triangle of death, which she admits she'd never heard of. So we have dermatologist Dr. Natalie Hone here. She's with Memorial Hermann. We appreciate you for coming in because this is so interesting. A lot of people are invested in this story. I mean, her follow-up video has like 11 million views. So tell us, what is the triangle of death? Is this real?
Yes, thank you for having me. So yes, this is rare, but it is real. So the triangle of death, or really the danger triangle is what we call it, is the area between the bridge of the nose and the corner of the mouth, so right here, and it will have the nose and the maxilla, and it's especially important because of the special anatomy of the blood vessels there. So the blood vessels there connect to something called the cavernous sinus, which is part of how the blood drains from the brain. And that cavernous sinus is found within the cavity of the brain, not the brain cavity, but the cranial cavity. And so there's a connection to it. So theoretically, if you have an infection within this triangle, you could then have what's called a retrograde infection towards the brain.
I see. So theoretically, we're talking about somebody popping a pimple, and then that it gets infected, and that's what's causing it to get worse?
Right. And so a small pimple would rarely cause that, but a pimple that gets really infected and causes something like an abscess, which is like a pocket of pus, can then have direct connection to that area. So it really has to get complicated for that to happen.
Right.
But yes, it could.
Wow, so what can you do instead? I mean, what are your other options?
So whenever you have concern for a pimple, and there's been case reports of also like a piercing on the nose, the first thing is if you have concern for infection, you want to try to avoid picking at it because we won't do it in a clean way. You don't want to promote more infection, more inflammation. It's best to be evaluated by a physician just to check it. I also would highly recommend looking for signs of infection. So that is fever, chills, redness, especially redness that's expanding, and inflammation of the area. You want to try, if you see any of that, you should be evaluated by a physician.
Okay. And you know, what are some of the common mistakes that you see in your practice people make?
So all dermatologists will ask you, please don't pop your pimples, right? It's very hard to do it in the right way in a clean setting. So popping a pimple can really cause things like infection, it can cause scarring, it can cause pigmentation, so discoloration of the skin. You want to maybe use a warm compress to the area, that's very helpful. And if you see that you're getting signs of infection like we discussed, it's best to be seen by a physician so that they can start you either on an oral antibiotic, sometimes we can inject the area with a little bit of steroid.
Wow, is there anything else they need to know, you know, if they happen to see it on someone else or, you know, themselves?
Yes, so anytime there's infection, you know, inflammation here, try to avoid touching it. Do what we talked about. Pimple patches, that's something people ask me about. That can help too. If things are just not getting better, it's best to go ahead and have an evaluation by your doctor, and they'll be able to treat you with oral antibiotics.
Okay, Dr. Natalie Hone, thank you so much for coming in from Memorial Hermann today. Appreciate it.